Jason walked alone through the dusty ruins of a crashed alien ship. His boots crunched over shattered metal, broken glass, and scorched earth. The sky above was red and dark, filled with clouds that looked like smoke. It had been days since he'd spoken to anyone. He was used to silence. He had no crew, no friends, and no purpose, only a mission to find salvage and survive. But that day, something was different. As he stepped deeper into the wreck, his eyes caught a soft light. It was coming from under a piece of broken wall. He paused, narrowed his eyes, and moved closer. There, inside a cracked stasis pod, was a girl. She looked young, maybe 16 or 17 in human years. Her skin had a soft shimmer, almost glowing, and her hair floated like it was underwater. But the most shocking thing, she had no legs. The lower half of her body was gone, and strange organic wires ran through her waist. Jason stared, unsure if she was dead or alive. Then her eyes fluttered open, and she looked at him. He stepped back in shock. The girl blinked again and tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. She was in pain, scared, and too weak to move. Jason's first instinct was to walk away. This was not his problem. He had no time for broken aliens. But something stopped him. She reached out, her hand shaking, her fingers thin and glowing blue. Jason looked at the hand, then back at her eyes. They were full of fear and hope. He sighed, dropped his bag, and bent down beside her. "It's okay," he said softly. Even though she didn't understand him, he carefully pulled her out of the pod and wrapped her in his emergency blanket. She was cold, ice-coldened, barely breathing. Jason picked her up gently, feeling how light she was. It was like holding a ghost. The way back to his camp was long and rough. The wind picked up, and red dust swirled around him. He looked down at her face. Her eyes closed again. "I must be crazy," he muttered to himself when he reached the camp. He laid her on the one clean bed he had. He turned on the heating unit, grabbed his medkit, and started working. Her wounds were old. He could tell she hadn't had legs for a while, but the damage looked intentional, not from the crash. Someone had taken her legs on purpose. Jason frowned. Trying not to think too hard about that, he cleaned her skin, sealed the open ports, and attached a weak power line to her spinal port. She twitched, eyes opening slowly. "Yell, Ree," she whispered, voice dry and soft like wind over sand. He froze, then leaned closer. "What? Is that your name?" he asked. She nodded weakly. Jason gave her some sips of water, helped her rest, and then sat beside her. He looked at the fire crackling in the corner, thinking, who was this girl? Why was she alone in that ship? And why did he care? That night, as the fire burned low, Jason heard a noise. It was a howl, not a natural one, but metallic. Like a hunting machine, he grabbed his blaster, stepped outside, and scanned the area. Red eyes flashed for a second near the rocks, then vanished. He returned to the shelter quickly and locked the doors. Something was out there, and it wanted her. He looked at Yelri, sleeping under the blanket, breathing soft and slow. She was different, alien, strange, but also helpless. Jason had no friends, no purpose, but for the first time in years, he felt needed. He sat beside her all night, blaster in hand, eyes on the door, waiting, guarding, and wondering what kind of trouble he had just brought into his lonely life. Gallery opened her eyes slowly. The world around her was quiet, filled with the soft hum of machines and the crackling sound of a fire. She didn't know where she was, but the human face staring at her didn't look angry or cruel. It looked tired. Jason offered her water again. Helping her sit up gently, she drank with small sips, then looked at the tube connected to her back. Her fingers brushed it, confused, then surprised. Jason spoke softly. "It's just giving you energy. Calm down." She didn't understand the words. But she understood his calm voice. The human man kept working on something near the corner, cutting, welding, adjusting metal every once in a while. He looked back at her, making sure she was still breathing. Jason had seen many things in his life wrecks. Dead aliens, broken tech, but nothing like her. Yelri was not just injured. Her body had been changed, maybe even modified. He'd seen signs of genetic enhancement in the scans. And the strange silver veins under her skin didn't look natural. He turned on his translator device, a cheap model but enough to detect speech patterns. He spoke again. "Yelri, who did this to you?" The device buzzed, glitched, and gave no answer. Yelri just looked at him with sad, tired eyes, then slowly tapped her chest. "Royal," she said in broken voice. Jason paused, surprised. "Royal? You mean? You're important." She nodded, then made a slicing gesture across her own waist, then pointed at herself and whispered, "Punished." Jason didn't need more words. He understood someone had taken her legs as punishment, maybe to keep her from escaping, maybe to shame her, and now she was alone, broken, and lost. Just like him, Jason didn't ask more questions. Instead, he turned back to the thing he was building. By evening, he rolled out a homemade sled load to the ground with soft padding, wheels, and a small battery-powered motor. He gently lifted Yelri from the bed and placed her on it. She tensed for a moment, but when he activated it and she moved smoothly across the room, her eyes lit up. A tiny smile appeared on her lips. Jason smiled back. "That's better," he said. And even though she didn't understand, she nodded for the next few days. They slowly began to understand each other. He would point to objects and say their names. She would repeat, correct, or laugh when he messed up her language. Jason laughed too. For the first time in months, but peace never lasted long on this planet. One evening, while testing the signal tower for long-range communication, Jason's scanner picked up movement. Not animal movement, organized, fast, and silent. He rushed inside. Shutting off the lights and locking the door, he whispered to Yelri, "Someone's coming." Her eyes widened, and she shook her head hard. "Bad," she said, trembling. "Black eyes? They come for me." Jason turned on the outside cam. 3 figures in dark armor were moving through the rocks, weapons in hand. They were not rescuers. They were hunters. He lowered the camera and looked at Yelri, who was trying to hide behind a crate. He knew what had to be done. He opened a secret panel in the floor, one that led to an underground tunnel from the old mining days. He picked up Yelri, placed her back on the sled, and guided her down into the tunnel. "Stay here," he said. Handing her a flare and his old knife, she held it tightly, looking up at him with fear. "Come back," she whispered. Jason nodded and closed the hatch above her. Outside, the mercenaries reached his shelter. They knocked once, then kicked the door in. Jason stood inside, holding a blaster in one hand, pretending to be surprised. One of the armored figures stepped forward, visor glowing red. "We're looking for a subject," he said coldly. "Female, alien, disabled?" Jason shrugged. "I've seen no one like that." The man scanned the room, noticing 2 cups, 2 blankets, and fresh tracks. "You're lying," the soldier hissed, raising his weapon. Jason didn't wait. He threw a flash bomb and ran out the back, dodging plasma fire. He led them away from the hatch, into the rocks, toward a trap he had built weeks ago, an unstable old tunnel rigged with charges as they chased him. He activated the detonator. The tunnel collapsed behind him, burying the hunters in dust and stone. He ran back, breathing hard, body bruised. He opened the hatch and saw Yelri holding the knife tight, eyes wide with fear. "It's okay," he said. Collapsing beside her, "I'm here." She dropped the knife and leaned into him for the first time. She trusted him, and Jason realized maybe he didn't have to be alone anymore. Jason didn't sleep that night. He sat with his back against the cold wall. blaster across his lap, and eyes fixed on the door. Yelri was resting on the padded sled beside him, her breathing soft and steady, but Jason could feel it. Danger was close. He had seen too many battles, too many broken promises, and too many good people die to ignore his gut feeling. The next morning, the desert was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no wind, no sounds of broken drones shifting in the sand. Jason stood on a ridge near the shelter, scanning the horizon with his old scope. At first, he saw nothing. Then movement, a shimmer in the heat haze, like light bending around something invisible. Cloaked ships, 3 of them, descending silently from the sky. He rushed back to Yelri. "We have to go," he said quickly, helping her onto the sled. She looked up at him with wide eyes, black eyes. She whispered. Jason nodded. "They found us." He triggered the underground escape tunnel again, sliding Yelri in and covering the hatch with old crates and sand. Then he powered up the camp's defense grid. What little of it he had, 2 weak turrets, a few proximity mines, and 1 EMP burst trap, barely enough to slow real mercenaries within minutes. The black-armored soldiers were on the ground. They didn't knock this time. They blew the front wall open with a grenade. Jason flew back from the blast, coughing. Ears ringing, 3 figures stepped into the smoke, weapons drawn, red visors glowing like demons. "Where is the girl?" One of them growled. Jason stood slowly, gun in hand. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, voice flat. "You were warned," said the soldier. Signaling to the others, one kicked over the crates, another scanned the floor. Jason fired first one clean shot to the knee joint of the nearest merc. Sending him down, chaos exploded. The turret on the roof activated and sprayed energy rounds. Forcing the soldiers to take cover, Jason ducked and rolled behind the wrecked table. Firing blind shots toward the door, smoke filled the room again, and then the EMP trap went off. Sparks flew, and 2 of the soldiers' visors shorted out. For a moment, Jason used that chance. He grabbed a small detonator and activated the sidewall charges. The explosion was enough to blow open the rear escape, and he ran. As he sprinted through the dust, he heard the soldiers shouting, but they didn't follow yet. Jason reached the hidden tunnel, dropped inside, and found Yelri waiting, holding the flare tightly in her hand. Her face lit up with relief. "You came back," she whispered. "Always," Jason said, wiping blood from his cheek. They followed the tunnel deeper underground. Jason knew there was an old mining transport cart deeper inside, half working, but still their best chance. He helped Yelri into the seat and powered it up. The motor groaned but came to life, slowly. The cart moved through the narrow shaft, heading toward the abandoned station he remembered from years ago. Yelri stared ahead, her voice quiet. "They will keep coming," she said. Jason nodded. "Then we stay ahead." After an hour, the tunnel opened into a large underground platform, covered in dust and lit only by weak emergency lights. The station was half-dead, broken walls, shattered monitors, and rusted metal everywhere. But there was one working console. Yelri floated toward it, reached out, and touched it with her palm. To Jason's shock, the console blinked to life. Blue lights glowed, and a hologram appeared. Maps, data logs, and an old message written in alien script. Yelri looked at Jason and said one word: "Sanctuary." He didn't understand, but he could see her hope. "This place. It's safe." She nodded. For now, Jason explored the rest of the station, finding old weapons, food supplies, and a half-working transmitter. Yelri stayed near the console, reading files with growing fear on her face. When Jason returned, she turned to him with worry in her eyes. They want me because of what I carry," she said, tapping her chest. Jason raised a brow. "You mean information?" She nodded. "My mind holds codes, power, Royal secrets, Jason whistled. So, you're not just royalty, you're a living database. Before she could answer, the lights flickered. Jason grabbed his blaster. Footsteps echoed down the tunnel they came from. Yellowry's eyes widened. They're here. Jason pulled her close. Then we hold them here. He set mines at the entrance, powered up the last working turret, and prepared for the fight. He wasn't going to lose her. Not now, not ever. The first explosion shook the walls like thunder in a cave. Jason held his breath as dust rained from the ceiling and chunks of old steel groaned under pressure. The mercenaries had found the outer entrance to the station and were breaking through. Yellowry stayed behind the console, hands pressed against the surface. Whispering soft words in her alien tongue, blue light danced across the wall. She was downloading something important. Jason ran to her, knelt beside the sled, and placed a hand on her shoulder. We have to move now, he said, voice sharp but calm. Yellowry didn't argue. She nodded once and pointed to the map glowing. Above the console, there, she said, her voice trembling, old ice shaft. It leads to deeper levels. Jason scanned it with his eyes, recognizing the markings. It was a maintenance tunnel that went through the glacier wall deep below the station. It hadn't been used in decades, cold, unstable, and nearly forgotten. Still, it was a way out. He loaded their supplies onto the sled and helped Yellowry on. The tunnel door creaked open with a hiss of icy air. Mist rolled in, biting his skin and fogging his breath. The temperature dropped fast. Jason shivered and tightened his coat, while Yellowry seemed almost calm. This cold. It reminds me of home, she said softly. Jason gave her a quick look, then smiled. Hope your home didn't have mercenaries chasing you through frozen caves. She giggled faintly. The first real laugh he'd heard from her. It made the cold feel less cruel. The passage was narrow and slick with frost. Jason had to push the sled manually at times, his boots sliding over the ice. Strange markings covered the wall's ancient writing, mixed with glowing lines beneath the ice. Yellowry touched one, and her eyes widened. This place. It's not just old dit's sacred. Jason blinked. Sacred? You mean like a temple? More than temple, she whispered. A vault of life. From before the wars, as they moved deeper, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber. Frozen statues of alien creatures lined the walls, caught in mid-motion, like frozen memories. At the center stood a broken control pillar, half buried in ice. Jason approached it and wiped off the frost. Symbols lit up faintly, responding to his touch. The system was still alive, just sleeping. Yellowry slid off her sled, floating gently in her hover rig. She moved to the pillar and pressed her palm against it. The room suddenly came to life. Lights lit up in sequence. And a low hum echoed through the air from the ceiling. A hatch opened and something lowered slowly. It was a suit, not just any suit, but something strange and beautiful. It hovered in place and looked like it was made of light and metal. For me, Yellowry said, surprised, it's a legacy suit. Meant for the royal envoy. Jason helped her into it. It adjusted to her shape perfectly, wrapping around her lower body like a second skin. Energy shimmered beneath it, forming two glowing legs, prosthetics that moved as if real. Yellowry stood on the ground for the first time, her eyes welled with tears. I never thought I'd stand again, she whispered. Jason stepped back and looked at her in awe. You're glowing, he said. She laughed through the tears. No. I'm just alive again, but the moment was cut short. The station above them exploded in a blast that echoed down into the chamber. A voice came through Jason's unit, gritty, cold, and full of command. We have you cornered, human. Surrender the girl, or die with her. Jason cursed and looked at Yellowry. She was already moving to the back of the room, where another passage had opened. This way, she said. I know where it leads, an ancient gateway. Jason followed. her quickly, not asking questions if she had a way out. He'd follow her to the ends of the galaxy. The new path was steep and narrow, with frozen steam vents hissing all around them. Strange lights blinked in the distance, possibly old defense systems powering up again. Jason held his blaster tight, scanning every corner. "I thought you said this was sacred," he whispered. "It is," Yelry said, "but sacred things often come with trials." As they reached the next chamber, Jason stopped in shock. Floating above a pool of frozen crystal was a machine half organic, of ancient tech. It looked like a heart, still beating slowly. Yelry floated toward it and placed her hand over it. The heart pulsed faster, and a door opened behind it. "They never wanted me to find this," she said. "But it's mine, my birthright." Jason stepped beside her. "And what is it exactly?" "A map," she said, eyes glowing with a strange fire. "To the last city of peace." He didn't know what that meant yet, but he believed her. Above them, the sounds of drilling began. The mercenaries were digging down fast. Jason aimed his blaster at the ceiling. "Then let's get moving before they bring the whole mountain down on us." And with that, they stepped through the ancient door into deeper secrets and deeper danger. The ancient door closed behind them with a soft thud. Jason looked back once, knowing the mercenaries would break through any minute. But now, he and Yelry were in a place far older than any mining station, a place that seemed to breathe with memory. The walls shimmered like crystal mixed with light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. It wasn't just a tunnel, it was alive. Yelry walked beside him, her new suit giving her floating legs of energy. Each step she took left behind a faint trail of light that faded softly. Jason watched her carefully, still amazed by how quickly she had changed. Just days ago, she was broken, afraid, and silent. Now she moved like someone meant to lead. At the end of the glowing corridor, a chamber opened, round and wide. In the center floated a sphere of golden blue energy. Turning slowly, it looked like a star trapped in a bubble. Yelry stopped, her face serious. "This is the ancient core," she said. Jason raised an eyebrow. "What's it do?" "It remembers," Yelry answered. "Everything." She stepped forward and placed her hand against the control plate near the core. Lights blinked. Then voices whispered through the air. Images appeared, ghostly figures of alien elders, humans, and other beings long gone. The core was showing history, memories recorded in energy. Jason stared in shock as he saw a human standing next to a being that looked like Yelry. They were smiling, holding hands in front of a city floating above the clouds. "That's impossible," Jason muttered. Yelry nodded. "Long ago, humans and my kind were allies." She pointed at the human figure. He was called the First Guardian, and the girl beside him was the First Voice. Jason looked at her. "You're connected to them?" Yelry whispered, "I am the last voice, the last link to that age." The core pulsed brighter, as if reacting to her presence. Suddenly, data streams filled the room. Maps, coordinates, ancient codes in glowing text. Yelry turned to Jason, her eyes glowing faintly. "This is what they want from me, not just who I am, but what I carry." Jason stepped closer. "And what do you carry, exactly?" "My body holds the lost codes," she said, tapping her chest. "They can unlock every forgotten vault, every secret weapon, every city we left behind." Jason whistled softly. "No wonder they cut off your legs. They were trying to erase your path." Yelry nodded, voice quiet. "But they failed. And now? You've helped me reclaim my power." Suddenly, the sphere pulsed red, and a warning flashed through the room. "They've broken through," Jason said, gripping his blaster tightly. Yelry didn't panic. She moved to the control panel and pressed her hand flat against it. The room shook, and hidden panels opened, revealing a storage cache inside. Were weapons, ancient and sleek, Nothing like what Jason had ever seen. He picked up one that looked like a rifle made of light. It fit his hands perfectly, humming with power. Yelri took a staff-like weapon that floated beside her, shaped like a long crystal blade. Just then, the inner door exploded behind them. 3 black-armored mercenaries stepped in. Weapons aimed. Jason didn't hesitate. He fired first. The energy beam struck with a silent flash, sending one of them flying back, armor sizzling. Yelri moved like a streak of light, her blade singing through the air as she clashed with another. The room turned into a blur of light, energy, and falling bodies. Jason ducked behind a pillar, firing shot after shot. He felt alive, not just fighting to survive, but to protect something worth saving. Yelri's voice echoed in his come. More. Are coming? We must go now. He ran to her, helped her power up the central core's exit system, and together they activated the gate. A beam of light shot upward, splitting the ceiling like glass. A circular platform rose beneath their feet, carrying them upward as the core sank in two. Defense mode. They were leaving the ancient chamber behind, but carrying its secrets with them. The platform rose into a vertical shaft, lined with glowing runes and old defense drones that nodded at Yelri as they passed. Jason looked at her and said, "So, what's next?" "We use these codes to hide again." Yelri shook her head, eyes serious. "No, Jason," she said. "We don't hide anymore. We awaken the others." Jason didn't understand it all, but he didn't care. He believed her. She had gone from a broken girl with no legs to something more, a voice of a forgotten past, and him. He was just a man with no friends. Until now, as the platform reached the top, the hatch opened to reveal a cold desert night. Stars twinkling above. Yelri reached out her hand to Jason. "We are not alone anymore," she whispered, and Jason took her hand, knowing his life would never be the same again. Asterisk, the cold night air hit them like a wave as the platform rose above the ancient vault. Jason blinked against the wind, his eyes adjusting to the stars overhead. They were standing in the middle of a rocky canyon, far from the old station and the broken tunnels, but peace didn't follow them. High above, dark ships circled like vultures, their engines silent and deadly. Mercenaries weren't just chasing anymore, they were hunting with purpose. Jason checked his weapon. The energy rifle they had taken from the core. Yelri stood beside him, her hover legs softly glowing as she scanned the sky. "They know we have the codes," she said, voice calm but cold. "They will come with everything." Jason frowned. "We can't keep running forever." Yelri looked at him, her face lit. "By moonlight? No, we don't run. We make our stand here." Jason blinked. "Here. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and we have something they don't," Yelri interrupted. She reached into her chest plate and pulled out a small crystal orb, glowing softly with golden light. "This is a beacon," she said. "One of the last signals used by the Ancient Alliance." Jason's eyes widened. "Can it call for help?" She nodded. "If any old allies still remain." Jason hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Then let's light it up." He set up defenses quickly, mines hidden under rock, turrets from his stash, and motion sensors built from scrap. Yelri stood in the center of the canyon, raising the beacon to the sky. The orb floated from her hand, spinning gently, sending out pulses of light that raced upward like silent fireworks. Jason watched it vanish into the sky. "Now what?" "Now," Yelri said, "we hold the line." The first ship came in, low and fast. Jason ducked as a blast scorched the rocks beside him. He returned fire with the energy rifle, its beam slicing through the enemy's wing, sending it crashing into the cliffside. But more came. Drop pods slammed into the ground, and black-armored troops spilled out, weapons ready. Jason took cover behind a metal slab and shouted, "We've got company." Yelri activated the ancient staff weapon, its blade humming with energy. She charged forward, swift and graceful, cutting through the first wave like a comet. Jason covered her, picking off targets with sharp, focused blasts. They fought together not as soldier and target, but as partners. Two lost souls now protecting something bigger than themselves. A missile exploded nearby, sending Jason flying backwards. He groaned, bleeding from his side, but still clutched his weapon. Yelry slid to his side, pulling him up with her hover-assisted strength. "Stay with me," she said. "Wasn't planning to die today." Jason grunted. Suddenly, the beacon glowed bright white and sent out a massive wave of light. The air shimmered, and then, out of nowhere, figures began to appear. Ships that looked like silver birds, landing silently all around. Humans, aliens, machines, old designs from the Forgotten Alliance stepped out, weapons drawn. Jason blinked. "Who?" Yelry smiled. "They came." The newcomers opened fire on the mercenaries, pushing them back with overwhelming force. Laser cannons, energy nets, sonic disruptors, tech Jason had only heard of in legends. The tide of battle turned. Yelry stood tall, her blade raised, and the others followed her lead. She wasn't just a girl anymore. She was a leader, a symbol. Jason, still injured, joined the line again, covering the rear with his rifle. One of the silver soldiers nodded at him. "Human, you fought well." Jason chuckled, wiping blood from his lip. "I had a good reason to." The final mercenary ship tried to escape, but a silver cruiser fired a single blast. Cutting it down, silence fell again, broken only by the wind. Jason dropped to one knee. Breathing heavy, Yelry walked to him, her hoversuit legs dimming down. "It's over," she whispered. "For now," Jason said. "But you know more will come." She nodded. "Yes. But next time, we won't be alone." The silver ship captains gathered around them, offering healing tools and salutes. Jason looked around at the strange yet familiar faces. It felt like a dream. He had started as a broken man in the desert. Now he was standing in the middle of an ancient army, reborn because he chose to help one helpless girl, and that girl had become a force strong enough to bring the stars back to life. Jason sat on the balcony of the orbital station, watching the stars drift slowly past the glass. His arm was bandaged, his ribs still sore. But he was breathing, alive, and for once, not alone. The station was old, built by the Alliance long ago, and left behind after the Great Collapse. Now it buzzed with new life, aliens of different races, old Alliance tech being repaired, and whispers of peace returning. All because of one small girl with no legs and a human who had nothing to lose. Yelry stood nearby, no longer in hiding. She wore a formal robe trimmed in silver, her hoversuit integrated smoothly into her form. She moved with grace and power. Now, not fear. Her presence made others stop and bow the last voice of her people. Alive and rising, Jason watched her speak to the Council of Surviving Alliance leaders. He couldn't understand all the words, but he saw the fire in her voice. She wasn't asking for help anymore. She was offering it, a new pact, a new future. After her speech, she returned to Jason, her glow softer under the lights. "You didn't tell them I used to cry in your shelter," she said, teasing. Jason smiled. "I didn't tell them I used to talk to rocks before you came along." They laughed together, the sound echoing gently in the quiet hall. She sat beside him, legs floating slightly above the ground. "I remember the first time you carried me," she said. "I thought I would die in your arms." Jason looked at his hands, "And I thought I was going to die alone." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of all they had survived. Pressing gently on their shoulders, "I've been offered a position," Jason finally said. "Head of defense for the new frontier fleet." Yelry raised an eyebrow. "Are you taking it?" He looked at her. "No," he said simply. "My place is with you." Yelry didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed her hand over his, warm and sure. There's still so much to rebuild, she whispered. I know, Jason said. But I've got nothing else worth doing. A soft chime echoed through the hall. And a small alien child approached them. It was a girl from Yelri's people, barely old enough to walk, her limbs still forming. She reached for Yelri shyly, holding a small crystal. Yelri bent down and took it gently. This was her mother's. She said, one of the lost. Jason looked at the child who hid behind Yelri's robe. What happens to her now? Yelri looked up. She stays with us. She learns who she is. She grows strong. Jason nodded. And maybe learns to play cards, he said. Grinning, Yelri laughed again. She'd probably beat you. News of the battle had spread across the stars. Stories of the last voice, the human who protected her, and the beacon that woke the sleeping army. Ships were beginning to arrive, ambassadors, survivors, hopefuls. Jason walked the halls of the station. People nodding, smiling, thanking him. But he didn't want thanks. He just wanted peace. He returned to his quarters, simple but quiet, and began to build again, not weapons, but a garden, a place with green plants, soft earth, and light. Yelri helped him choose seeds. Why a garden? She asked once. Because it grows slowly, Jason answered, like healing one evening. She found him watching the stars again. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you left me in that wreck? She asked softly. Jason didn't. Turn every day, he said. And every day I'm glad I didn't. She sat beside him, her hand finding his without effort now. You were broken, and so was I, she said. But now we're not. Jason looked at her, the glow in her eyes soft, the scars on her face faded, but still there. No, we're not, he said, as the stars drifted. And the old station came alive once more. A new chapter began, one not written by generals or kings, but by a girl who had no legs and a human who had no friends. Together, they had survived. Together, they had changed the galaxy. And together, they would build a future. One step, one voice, one hand at a time.